All right. Welcome to the 72nd episode of the Henry George Daily Devotional. Are you devoted yet? We are in Chapter 3 of Book 7, Claim of Landowners to Compensation. Henry George writes in 1879, "The truth is, and from this truth there can be no escape, that there is and can be no just title to an exclusive possession of the soil, and that private property in land is a bold, bare, enormous wrong like that of chattel slavery." I know I've said chattel. I've also pronounced it chattel. I'm going with chattel. I don't know. Not an expert in chattel. The majority of men in civilized communities do not recognize this simply because the majority of men do not think. With them, whatever is right, until its wrongfulness has been frequently pointed out, and in general they are ready to crucify whoever first attempts this. It's a little simplistic here. Like, I don't know. In terms of what's right and wrong in interpersonal relationships, I think everybody has pretty decent intuition. It is something subtle about why we fail to understand land. Like, honestly, that's one of the bigger uh, sometimes like questions I have about Georgism is like, it's kind of weird to be like, oh, you're telling me humans have done this wrong ever since we started being civilized? Um, and it's not, I mean, a lot of places haven't quite treated land like we currently treat land. And it does harken back to, I remember hearing a bunch of philosophy people say, the best form of governance is a benevolent dictator. You have one dude, he owns everything, he's the king, but he's just very kind and just, and he knows everybody, and he makes sure everybody gets what's fair. But anyway, George continues, "But it is impossible for anyone to study political economy even as at present taught, or to think at all upon the production and distribution of wealth, without seeing that property in land differs essentially from property in things of human production, and that it has no warrant in abstract justice. This is admitted either expressly or tacitly in every standard work on political economy, but in general merely by vague admission or omission." Well, all right, George, if it's expressly or tacitly admitted, and sometimes by admission or sometimes omission, what what that's a pretty broad claim. Attention is yeah, if people if people don't espouse my view, it's yeah, it's admitted by omission. Um, doesn't count. Attention is in general called away from the truth, as a lecturer on moral philosophy in a slave-holding community might call away attention from too close a consideration of the natural rights of men, and private property in land is accepted without comment as an existing fact, or is assumed to be necessary to the proper use of land and the existence of the civilized state. I think there is this presumption that war somehow in olden times was more just, um, and so the winner somehow getting that land was just. I know that as a kid, or even getting older, I've almost like idealized, you know, some indistinct idea of being an early human warrior, or even more a medieval warrior, where you're fighting in like these correct wars, and then you've defended your people, and that's your land, and you've defended your country and your land. Um, Yet it's like very hard to point at any actual conflict and be like, oh yeah, the people who aggressed here um, deserve all this land, and the people who were just here before, you know, don't. And then it's like, how do you even get to the first situation where there was a people in one area who didn't take it from somebody else anyway? Um, I was reading a bunch about the War of the Roses the other day, uh, and that is sort of one of my idealized wars. But who's right, who's wrong, who should get to control England? And they ended up just marrying each other or whatever. I am not knowledgeable about English history, so leave me alone. The examination through which we have passed has proved conclusively that private property in land cannot be justified on the ground of utility. All right? Can't be justified on utility. We're going to make it through this one? I don't think so. That, on the contrary, it is the great cause to which are to be traced the poverty, misery, and degradation, the social disease, and the political weakness, which are showing themselves so menacingly amid advancing civilization. Expediency therefore joins justice in demanding that we abolish it. We haven't recognized this expediency, have we? Excuse me. When expediency thus joins justice in demanding that we abolish an institution that has no broader base or stronger ground than a mere municipal regulation, what reason can there be for hesitation? Ah, yes, here we get into the whole Georgist naysayers that surround me everywhere, all you people listening. It can't be done, it can't be done, it'll never happen. That's what you sound like. The consideration that seems to cause hesitation, even on the part of those who see clearly and read clearly, that land by right is common property, is the idea that having permitted land to be treated as private property for so long, we should, in abolishing it, be doing a wrong to those who have been suffered to base their calculations upon its permanence. Ah, yes. Look over in that neighborhood. There's a whole bunch of people who are poor and starving. Look over in that neighborhood. There's a bunch of people who own a bunch of houses, and own all the houses over there and rent them out to all those poor and starving people. We better not implement Georgism too fast, because all of the people in the nice neighborhoods, uh, they might have to give up their rental properties. Oh no. Uh, there is sort of one way in which I'll concede to the landed class people. Of course, there's a spectrum of how egregiously they have exploited the land, and one person to another person. There's big differences. But they will be affected almost in proportion to how much they currently exploit land. The reason I would consider compromise is purely for pragmatic political reasons. If you can get a tyrant to agree to stop their tyranny in 6 months, versus 6 years, I mean, why wouldn't you agree to that? If it's going to take a bloody war and a bunch of people are going to die, but the tyrant says, all right, let's not have a war, I'll just acquiesce again in 6 months or something, then I would accept that too. Of course, who knows if they're going to stick to their word. Whereas if the tyrant's like, all right, I'll give up all of my tyranny right now if you give me, $100, it's like, well, the tyrant doesn't deserve that $100, but you know, it's better than they're continuing to be a tyrant. So if we need to pay off the landowners, I mean, but maybe if we're having to pay them off, we're already like the society doesn't truly all believe or understand. I don't know. I don't know how you actually affect political change anyway. Sortition. All right, we'll go back to George. That having permitted land to be held as rightful property, we should, by the resumption of common rights, be doing injustice to those who have purchased it with what was unquestionably their rightful property. Thus, it is held that if we abolish private property in land, justice requires that we should fully compensate those who now possess it. As the British government, in abolishing the purchase and sale of military commissions, felt itself bound to compensate those who held commissions, which they had purchased in the belief that they could sell them again, or as in abolishing slavery in the British West Indies, 100 million, the six is a dollar bill, was paid to slave owners. All right, yeah, this does remind me of like sort of the common law. Uh, what happened? I think I've mentioned this before, or maybe I blogged about it. What happens when you buy stolen goods and you yourself were not aware they were stolen? I forget how most law. I mean, how. What happens if you buy stolen goods and didn't realize it? It's not punishable by law. Okay, so if you own a bunch of land right now, you didn't realize that you were like a conqueror, we won't punish you by law. Um, but it sounds like in these cases, uh, you don't get to keep any of it. We don't pay you off for turning it in. However, of course, we do cut deals. So if you bought stuff and then you're like, hey, I'll tell you who sold it to me, maybe we get you a deal. So tell us who sold us your land and who they took it from all the way back. I don't know. Even Herbert Spencer, who in his Social Statics has so clearly demonstrated the invalidity of every title by which the exclusive possession of land is claimed. Yes, landed titles. Also, isn't it crazy to think about military commissions being similar to like taxi medallions? Like, it's not meritocratic who gets to be in charge of the military. It's just rich people buying position. I'm sure there was still meritocracy at some point because people want to win wars. Uh, anyway, Herbert Spencer's thing gives countenance to this idea, though it seems to me inconsistently by declaring that justly to estimate and liquidate the claims of the present landholders, who have either by their own acts or by the acts of their ancestors given for their estates equivalents of honestly earned wealth, to be one of the most intricate problems society will one day have to solve. Uh-huh. Too hard to solve. Like figuring out who should pay reparations to whom in America. Like, who cares? Just make society free now, and everyone who's born into it has a free and equal share of the land. It is this idea that, like, I would say, this is me going off on my own here, I would say a human is happier knowing that they can work hard and receive the compensation for their work than if they were not able to receive compensation for their work and just given, like, some flat amount. This is like the argument people make against sort of naive universal basic income. It's like, but but maybe I'm not even so sure about that because I often fight against the idea that people have to have work in their lives to feel meaningful and feel like they're contributing to society. Uh, I feel like I only feel the need to contribute to society if I feel like there's something wrong with society. If I'm in a group where everything seems really good and fair and happy, I don't know. I'm just talking about like a friend group or something, just like a hangout or a party where it's like nothing's wrong, everything's good here. You know, we're all just hanging out, partying or happy. It's like I don't feel. Do you feel a need to contribute when you're at a good party, or but when you go camping and you have to set up camp, you feel a need to contribute. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about. It is this idea that suggests the proposition which finds advocates in Great Britain that the government shall purchase at its market price the individual proprietorship of the land of the country. And it was this idea which led John Stuart Mill, although clearly perceiving the essential injustice of private property in land, to advocate not a full resumption of the land, but only a resumption of accruing advantages in the future. His plan was that a fair and even liberal estimate should be made of the market value of all the land in the kingdom, and that future additions to that value, not due to the improvements of the proprietor, should be taken by the state. Yes, this is our land value tax. To say nothing of the practical difficulties which such cumbrous plans involve, well, it's only for the future additions to that value. Not quite right. Um, to say nothing of the practical division which such cumbrous plans involve in the extension of the function of government which they would require and the corruption they would beget, their inherent and essential defect lies in the impossibility of bridging over, by any compromise, the radical difference between wrong and right. What if we stop there in the middle of a paragraph? Is that crazy? I guess it's been 17 minutes. How much farther? I'm doing it. I'm stopping in the middle of a sentence because I'm going to do two today because I didn't do any yesterday. I'm losing my streak, my touch. All right, like, subscribe, share, believe, comment, think about it.